Nicola Sturgeon, Cogan, Seanad and you. It is indeed a great honour to welcome you, First Minister, to Ireland and to this House on behalf of the Sinn Féin party. We welcome you as the leader of a nation and people with whom we in Ireland enjoy a long and enduring affinity as close neighbours and good friends. We share a strong Gaelic heritage, language and Celtic culture, of which we are both rightly proud of. The historic bonds between our two nations has been well catalogued and indeed was spoken about earlier on by you, Cathaoirleach, and you, First Minister. But of course, Scotland gave us two iconic revolutionaries of the 1916 Easter Rising in James Connolly and Margaret Skinnader, who in no small way, along with others, shaped Ireland over the past century in our struggle for national independence. And I should mention also in 1937 the Kirkendullah tragedy, which has links with my own community in Mayo, with Achill Island, and the 10 people who lost their lives there. And to acknowledge in the context of that the great contribution that Scotland made when people from the west of Ireland and the community I came from travelled to Scotland to participate in the potato harvesting. And indeed, many families left at home in Ireland and in the west of Ireland were dependent on that money to come from Scotland to Ireland. And we make every effort possible to keep up those ties on a community level. And you will be very welcome to Mayo and to Achill Island to see for yourself. But today, your visit, First Minister, is about the future and about how our nations will strengthen the bond that ties us politically, culturally and economically. The island of Ireland and Scotland has held membership status of the EEC and the EU since 1973, and throughout this period of 43 years we have become progressively integrated into the European Union and the single market. Sinn Féin has a long-standing policy of critical engagement with the EU, where we support measures that are in Ireland's interests and oppose and campaign for progressive reform on those which are bad for Ireland. However, there is absolutely no denying that the unilateral decision being taken at this time by the British government to withdraw membership from the EU and drag Scotland and the north of Ireland with it without our consent is disastrous and profoundly undemocratic. I welcome your statement that you will support unequivocally the open border. The British government is on a collision course with the EU, in which our stability and economic process are regarded as collateral damage. On the 23rd of June, 62% of voters in Scotland and 56% of voters in the north of Ireland democratically expressed their wish to remain within the EU. For our part in Sinn Féin, we are strongly opposed to the North being forced out of the EU and believe that as part of the Brexit negotiations, it is essential that we argue the case for designated special status for the North within the European Union. We believe it is in our interest to find common cause with regions such as Scotland, who share our objective to remain and work together to argue our case in forthcoming negotiations on Brexit. The British government is indicating that they intend to repeal the European Communities Act, leaving all EU legislation on the statute books so that Westminster can pick it apart and decide what is to be retained, amended or repealed. This will have very serious consequences for the devolved regions, since the legislative competence is underpinned by the respective Scotland Act and the NI Act 1998, which means that no law can be incompatible with any of the conventions on rights or to be incompatible with EU community law. Today, Ireland, like Scotland, is a confident region in transition. The Good Friday Agreement, which received overwhelming endorsement in referenda held north and south, represents the institutional, constitutional and legal framework which defines the new relationships that now exist within and between Ireland and Britain. The agreement also enshrines the right of the Irish people alone to exercise their right to self-determination and to united Ireland through consent by referendum north and south. Sinn Féin believes that Brexit and the assistance of the British government to drag the north of Ireland out of the EU with it severely undermines the institutional, constitutional and legal integrity and status of the Good Friday Agreement, an international treaty of which the Irish government is a co-guarantor and which the people of Ireland reasonably expect them to safeguard and defend all of its parts. The risks otherwise are to unravel the peace and progress for the past 20 years. And finally, Cathaoirleach, we are in uncharted territory since no member state has left the EU before. However, given that there is already a recognition at EU level of the special circumstances that pertain on the island of Ireland, it is an entirely rational position to argue for the North to be designated special status within the EU. The political stability, economic prosperity, trade relationships and jobs of the entire island of Ireland must be protected and enhanced together. But Ireland must support too Scotland's democratic right to retain its natural position within the EU through a differentiated relationship with the EU. I commend your leadership, First Minister Sturgeon, in standing up for Scotland's national interest in this regard. Gora Míle Mágad.
Senator Higgins.